Hi, good morning everybody. In last class, we discussed something related to February Revolution. Okay, I think all of you read your textbook very well. Have you any doubt from this topic? Okay, then listen. The coming examination, we know that is our PT1 examination, 80-mark examination. There is included this chapter also. I think till First World War. That means a half part of this chapter. But total 1.5 chapter. All of you want to study very clearly, especially from textbook. That is very, very important in your case. Then, what are the important things you studied the earlier class, the last class from this topic? Which topic? The February Revolution in Petrograd. Okay. There is one problem arises. Which problem? Yes, the staple diet price increases and also there is revolution started. The main reason behind the revolution, staple diets price increases like French Revolution. Okay, and also one thing we know that there is two area they selected for living the two area. That means one river bank. Okay, one side there is only the workers, the other side highly privileged people. Okay. Then there is a certain problem created. That is the February Revolution. We already discussed. I just repeat the important things from the previous topic. Okay, listen. In February 1917, what happened? There is created a big problem. That is the food shortages. Okay, food shortages were deeply felt in the workers' quarters. So on the 22nd February, a lockout took place in one factory, and next day 50 factories called a strike and demonstrated at the center of the capital, Nevsky. Okay, there is a strike started. What is the reason behind it? Because their staple diet or their important food item, they felt some scarcity. Okay, that means the food shortages. That is the main reason behind it. That means the main reason behind the strike. Okay. On Sunday, 25th February, the government suspended the Duma. Okay, what happened 25th February? Government suspended the Duma. The politicians spoke out against this measure. Demonstration against it spread and participants returned to the street of the left bank on the 26th February. On 27th February, police headquarters were ransacked. We already discussed earlier. That's why I just simply read this. Okay, can you follow my class? Then, when the government called the cavalry to fire on the demonstrators, the cavalry refused. The striking workers had gathered to form Soviet or council. Here is the striking workers, they gathered and there is create one council, or what is the another name of council that we call Soviet. Okay, this was Petrograd Soviet. This council is called a Petrograd Soviet. Then, the next day, the Tsar abdicated on the advice of his military commanders. After this, a provisional government under Kerensky came into being, which was dominated by army officials, landowners and industrialists. Okay, listen here. Lastly, we discussed there is started Petrograd Soviet. After that, Tsar, here is the military commanders advised Sir to abdicate. Okay, what do you mean by abdicate? Rajvekya. Then, continuation for the previous topic. After February, what happened here is after February. That want to discuss. Okay, today we want to discuss after February. Is it clear? Okay, what is our next topic? After February. Okay, after February. army officials, landowners, and industrialists were influential in the provisional government. Here is who influenced. Here is army officials, landowners, and industrialists. They were influential in the provisional government, but the liberals as well as socialists among them worked towards an elected government. Listen, here is somebody influenced in the provisional government. At the same time, like socialists and others, liberals, they worked towards an elected government. Restrictions on public meeting and associations were removed. There already existed, there is some restrictions, there is some limitations, but that is now completely removed. What completely removed? There is a public meeting and associations. Now they can start the public meeting or they can form the associations. Earlier time that is not allowed there, but now the restrictions avoided or removed. What are the restrictions? Earlier time they can't form associations, there is no public meeting, but now that limitations or that restrictions are removed. Then Soviets like the Petrograd Soviet were set up everywhere, though no common system of election was followed. Okay, there is no common system of election was not followed. In April 1917, the Bolshevik leader Vladimir Lenin returned to Russia from his exile. What happened in April 1917? Okay, Vladimir Lenin, he returned to Russia from his exile. അതായത് നാട് കടത്തപ്പെട്ടിരുന്നു. അപ്പോൾ അതൊക്കെ അവസാനിച്ച് he returned to Russia. He and the Bolshevik had opposed the war since 1940. Listen, he and the Bolsheviks. Okay, we already discussed Bolsheviks. Listen, here is Lenin and Bolsheviks opposed. Opposed means against, edirthu. Okay, opposed the war since 1914. Now he felt it was time for Soviet to take over power. Listen, now he think about it's a time for what? It was time for Soviet to take over power. He declared that the war be brought to a close, land be transferred to the peasants. He declared, here is what he declared. He declared that the war be brought to a close and be transferred to the peasants and bank be nationalized. അദ്ദേഹം എന്ത് ചെയ്തു? ഭൂമിയൊക്കെ പെസൻസിന് വിട്ടുകൊടുത്തു. ലാൻഡ് ആൻഡ് ഓൾസോ ഹിയർ ഈസ് ബാങ്ക് നാഷണലൈസ്ഡ്. ബാങ്കുകളൊക്കെ എന്ത് ചെയ്തു? ദേശസാൽക്കരിച്ചു. ലാൻഡ് പെസൻസിന് വിട്ടുകൊടുത്തു. ദാറ്റ് ആർ ദ ചേഞ്ചസ്. These three demands were Lenin April thesis. It is called Lenin's April thesis. All of you underline that. Listen, here is three demands that were called Lenin April thesis. He also argued that the Bolshevik party rename itself the Communist Party to indicate its new radical aims. And also he demanded one thing. Here want to change the Bolshevik party's name. He adopted a new name. What is that? Communist Party. Listen. He argued that the Bolshevik party rename itself the Communist Party to indicate its new radical aims. Most others in the Bolshevik party were initially surprised by the April thesis. Listen, most of the people surprised the April thesis, the starting time. Initial time means the starting time. Then they thought that the time was not yet ripe for a socialist revolution and the provisional government needed to be supported. But the development of the subsequent months changed their attitude. Listen, now we discussed what happened here is after revolution or after February. Okay, listen. We know one thing here is mainly we want to discuss the Lenin's April thesis. What we call Lenin's April thesis? Okay, who was Lenin? Bolshevik leader. Okay, Bolshevik leader is called Vladimir Lenin. He returned to Russia from his exile in April 1917. Now he felt it was the time for Soviet to take over the power. He renamed Bolshevik as the Communist Party. These are called what? Lenin's April thesis. Okay, and also here is these listen, April thesis there is included three demands. First demand, he changed his name. His means his party's name. Which party? Bolshevik party's name. Now that was called the Communist Party. Then he and Bolshevik had opposed the war since 1914. Okay. Then another thing, he declared that the war he brought to a close. Lenin wanted that land be transferred to the peasants. The third demand was banks should be nationalized. The three demands constituted Lenin's April thesis. Okay, is it clear? I repeat, listen, when you hear this question, which question? What was Lenin's April thesis? How can you write that? Okay, firstly you want to write the introductory. What is that? Bolshevik leader Vladimir Lenin returned to Russia from his exile when in April 1917. Now he felt it was time for Soviet to take over the power. He renamed Bolshevik as Communist Party. Okay. Next one, he and Bolsheviks had opposed the war since 1914. Lenin and Bolshevik opposed the war since 1914. He declared that the war be brought to a close. അദ്ദേഹം എന്താ തീരുമാനിച്ചത്? യുദ്ധം എങ്ങനെയെങ്കിലും അവസാനിപ്പിക്കണം. Then the third demand was the bank should be nationalized. He wanted the land be transferred to the peasants. അല്ലേ, ലാൻഡ് പെസൻസിന് വിട്ടുകൊടുക്കുക, ബാങ്കുകളൊക്കെ നാഷണലൈസ് ചെയ്യുക. These three demands constituted Lenin's April thesis. Is it clear? Okay, that only the important topic from this. Then through the summer, the workers' movement spread. In industrial areas, factory committees were formed which began questioning the way industrialists ran their factories. Listen, through the summer, the workers' movement spread. There is workers' movement spread. എല്ലായിടത്തും workers' movement പരന്നു. Okay, listen. In industrial areas, factory committees were formed which began questioning the way industrialists ran their factories. Listen, here is one restriction completely avoided. Which restriction completely avoided? There is already existing something like they can't form the associations, there is no public meeting, but now they can form the associations and also there is from the public meetings. That's why here the factory committees were formed which began questioning the way industrialists ran their factories. Trade unions grew in number. Soldiers' committees were formed in the army. In every sector there is they formed their own committee. Listen, here is a factory committee, then soldiers' committee, like that. Trade unions grew in number. Soldiers' committee were formed in the army. In June, about 500 Soviets sent representatives to an old Russian Congress of Soviet. Underline that. What happened there? In June, there is a 500 Soviets sent representatives to an old Russian Congress of Soviet. How many representatives they sent? 500 representatives. As the provisional government saw its power reduce and Bolshevik influence grow. Listen, as a provisional government saw, what is that? Its power reduce. Provisional government's power reduce. Who grew up there? Bolshevik grew up there. Provisional government understood one thing. ഞങ്ങളുടെ പവർ കുറഞ്ഞു വരികയാണ്. Here is increasing the power of Bolshevik. Then it decided to take stern measures against the spreading discontent. It resisted attempt by workers to run factories and began arresting leaders. Listen, here is a provisional government now understood one thing. Here is their power reduces, at the same time Bolsheviks' power increased. That's why they want to limit the power of the Bolshevik. That's why they resisted the attempt by workers to run factories and began arresting leaders. Popular demonstrations staged by the Bolshevik in July 1917 were sternly repressed. Many Bolshevik leaders had to go into hiding or flee. Provisional government decided to arrest the dominant leaders. That's why here is no other choice. Somebody go into hiding or flee. പലരും എന്താണ് ഒളിവിലേക്ക് പോയി. Meanwhile, that means at the same time, in the countryside, the peasants and their socialist revolutionary leaders pressed for a redistribution of land. Listen, here is a controversy among the Bolshevik and the provisional government. Provisional government saw their power reduces, Bolsheviks' power increases or growth. On that occasion, they decided to reduce the power of the Bolshevik. That's why they started arresting the leaders, especially the Bolshevik leaders. Okay. At the same time, the countryside, the peasants and their socialist revolutionary leaders pressed for a redistribution of land. Land committees were formed to handle this. There is a started redistribution of land. That's why there is some land committees were formed to handle this. What? Distribution of land. They need to handle distribution of land. That's why there is started one committee. Encouraged by the socialist revolutionaries, peasants seized land between July and September 1917. Listen, encouraged by the socialist revolutionaries, the peasants seized land between July and September 1917. Seize land between what is the duration? July and September 1917. Okay, July and September. In which year? 1917. Okay. Now we discussed after revolution what happened there. Okay, we know that after revolution there is one leader, Lenin, Vladimir Lenin, came to Russia. Listen, on that occasion he decided one thing. Firstly, he decided to close the war. After that, here is want to change his party's name. That means Bolshevik changed the party name as Communist Party. And also here is banks nationalized, land redistributed to peasants. But provisional government decided to reduce the power of the Bolshevik. That's why the important demonstrators or important leaders were arrested. And also here is one thing, at the same time in the countryside, peasants started there is land distribution to maintaining or to managing these activities. That's why there is started one committee for distribution of land. Okay, especially it happened there July and September 1970. Is it clear? Okay, then we moving on. Another topic, the revolution of October 1970. But then we want to discuss the October Revolution. In which year? 1970. The revolution of October 1917. Okay, February Revolution, October Revolution, different types of revolution. Okay, listen. But next we want to discuss the revolution of October 1917. As the conflict between the provisional government and the Bolshevik grew, Lenin feared the provisional government would set up a dictatorship. Listen. The previous paragraph we discussed, there is a conflict between provisional government and a Bolshevik. Okay, on that occasion, Lenin feared here may be started the dictatorship. In September, he began discussion for an uprising against the government. Bolshevik supporters in the army, the Soviet and factories were brought together. Listen. Here, as the conflict between the provisional government and the Bolsheviks grew, Lenin feared the provisional government would be set up a dictatorship. In September, he began discussion for an uprising against the government. That's why in September, what happened there is started some discussion related to the uprising of the provisional government. Okay. Bolshevik supporters in the army, Soviet and factories were brought together. Who are participated that meeting? Here is the Bolshevik supporters. In what are the areas? Bolshevik supporters in the army, Bolshevik supporters in the Soviet and factories. They were brought together. On 16th October 1917, Lenin persuaded the Petrograd Soviet and the Bolshevik Party to agree to a socialist seizure of power. Okay, listen. On 16th October 1917, what happened there? Lenin persuaded the Petrograd Soviet and Bolshevik Party to agree to a socialist seizure of power. Okay. A military revolutionary committee was appointed by the Soviet under Lenin Trotsky to organize the seizure. The date of the event was kept a secret. Listen, the date of the event that kept secret. അത് അവർ രഹസ്യമായിട്ട് സൂക്ഷിച്ചു. There is started one committee. Listen, here is appointed one committee. Listen, a military revolutionary committee was appointed by Soviet under Leon Trotsky. Okay, listen. Here is a Leon Trotsky to organize the seizure. ഇതിനു വേണ്ടിയിട്ടാണ് ഈ പവർ പിടിച്ചടക്കുന്നതിന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ടാണ്. The uprising began on 24th October. Sensing trouble, Prime Minister Kerensky had left the city to common troops. At dawn, military men loyal to the government seized the building of two Bolshevik newspapers. Pro-government troops were sent to take over the telephone and telegraph offices and protect the Winter Palace. In a swift response, the Military Revolutionary Committee ordered its supporters to seize government offices and arrest ministers. Late in the day, the ship Aurora shelled the Winter Palace. Other vessels sailed down the Neva and took over the various military points. By nightfall, the city was under the committee's control and the ministers had surrendered. At a meeting of the All-Russian Congress of the Soviet in Petrograd, the majority approved the Bolshevik action. Uprising took place in the other cities. There was heavy fighting, especially in Moscow, but by December, the Bolshevik controlled the Moscow-Petrograd area. Okay, listen. Now, we are discussing the revolution of October 1970, in which situation that started, or October revolution. Here we understood one thing, the conflict between the provisional government and the Bolsheviks. Bolsheviks want to retain their power, but provisional completely control the power and reduce the power of the Bolshevik. They always try. On that occasion, here is Lenin started. Here is a military revolutionary committee. Listen, on 16th October 1970, Lenin persuaded the Petrograd Soviet and Bolshevik party to agree to a socialist seizure to power. A military revolutionary committee was appointed by the Soviet under Leon Trotsky to organize the seizure. The date of the event was kept a secret. We already discussed. The uprising began on 24th October. Sensing trouble, Prime Minister Kerensky had left the city to summon troops. At dawn, military men loyal to the government seized the building of two Bolshevik newspapers. Pro-government troops were seen to take over the telephone and telegraph offices and protect the Winter Palaces. അതൊരു മുന്നറിയിപ്പ് നൽകാതെ ഓഫീസസൊക്കെ പിടിച്ചെടുക്കാൻ നോക്കി. In a swift response, what do you mean by swift response? വളരെ പെട്ടെന്നുള്ള ഒരു പ്രതികരണം. In a swift response, the Military Revolutionary Committee ordered its supporters to seize government officers and arrest ministers. Listen, on that occasion, there is a sudden movement, okay, or a sudden response, a swift response. The Military Revolutionary Committee ordered its supporters, what he ordered, to seize government officers and arrest ministers. Government officers seize ചെയ്യുക, പിടിച്ചെടുക്കുക, and also arrest the ministers. Late in the day, the ship, that is the Aurora, shelled the Winter Palace. Other vessels sailed down the Neva and took over various military points. By nightfall, the city was under a committee's control and the ministers had surrendered. Okay, city completely under the control of the committee. Which committee? Here already started one secret committee, that is the Military Revolutionary Committee. Under this committee, they decided everything. Then, at the meeting on the All-Russian Congress of the Soviet in Petrograd, the majority approved the Bolshevik action. The majority approved the Bolshevik action. That means the majority's support got the Bolshevik party. Uprising took place in other cities. There was heavy fighting, especially in Moscow. But by December, the Bolshevik controlled the Moscow-Petrograd area. Avsanam, Moscow-Petrograd area, that also the Bolshevik controlled. Okay. Listen, here we discussed the revolution of October, or October revolution. Okay, related to this topic, which topic? Yes, the February Revolution in Petrograd. The February Revolution in Petrograd, there is included, firstly we discussed February Revolution, then we discussed Lenin's April thesis, lastly we discussed the October Revolution. What was the reason behind it, the October Revolution and February Revolution? Then what are the main demands included, the April thesis, and so many things we discussed here is, okay. Related to this topic, we want to discuss some more important questions, okay. All of you listen here. Now we want to discuss certain important questions from this topic, I mean the third point, okay. Listen, in your textbook, each chapter there is some part 1, 2, 3, that type of, here we already discussed or we already completed the 3 parts. Now we want to discuss the third parts questions, okay. One important question. Describe the events of February 1970. Describe the events of February 1970. Or another type of question. Answer is the same. The question has some slight changes. The second one, describe the February Revolution of 1917 in Petrograd. Another question, state any 5 events that led to February Revolution in Petrograd. Why was Tsar forced to leave the throne in 1917? Okay, here is 4 questions. These 4 questions are the same answer. Okay, I repeat, what is my question? Describe the events of February 1917. Okay, I think the same line included in your textbook. I just read, all of you want to underline that in your textbook. On Sunday, 25th February, the government suspended the Duma. Okay, on Sunday, 25th February, what happened? Government suspended the Duma. The politicians spoke out against these measures. Okay. Then, demonstrators against it spread. Anti-participants returned to the street of the left bank on the 26th February. On 27th February, police headquarters were ransacked. The demonstrators came in the street, then raising slogans about bread, wages, better hours and democracy. We already discussed earlier. When the government called the cavalry to fire on the demonstrators, the cavalry refused. The striking workers had gathered to form Soviet or council. This was Petrograd Soviet. The next day, Tsar abdicated on the advice of his military commanders. Okay. Another question. Describe the circumstances which were responsible for the Russian Revolution. What is my question? Describe the circumstances. What do you mean by circumstances? Situations. ഏത് സാഹചര്യത്തിലാണ് റഷ്യൻ റവല്യൂഷൻ സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്തത്? ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് മൈ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ. ഐ റിപ്പീറ്റ്, ഡിസ്ക്രൈബ് ദ സർക്കംസ്റ്റാൻസസ് വിച്ച് വർ റെസ്പോൺസിബിൾ ഫോർ ദ റഷ്യൻ റവല്യൂഷൻ. റഷ്യൻ റവല്യൂഷന് റെസ്പോൺസിബിൾ ആയിട്ടുള്ളത്, ഉത്തരവാദിയായിട്ടുള്ള സാഹചര്യങ്ങൾ എന്തൊക്കെയായിരുന്നു? Or explain any 5 causes leading to the outbreak of Russian Revolution. Okay, what is the another model of the question? Explain any 5 causes leading to the outbreak of Russian Revolution. Or another type of question, highlight the social and political condition that led to the Russian Revolution. Okay, here is 3 types of question, but these 3 questions have the same answer. Okay, all of you listen here. Russia was a huge country, but one of the least industrialized European nation. Listen, Russia was a huge country. Russia is a huge country, but in case of industrialized, least industrialized European nation. വളരെ കുറച്ച് വ്യവസായങ്ങളുള്ള ഒരു യൂറോപ്യൻ നാഷനാണ് റഷ്യ. Most industries were the private properties of industrialists. Working conditions were poor. The industrial workers suffered exploitation. Listen, huge country, but in case of industrialists, it's very least comparing to other European nation or European countries. അല്ലേ, മറ്റുള്ള യൂറോപ്യൻ നാഷനായിട്ട് കമ്പയർ ചെയ്യുകയാണെങ്കിൽ ഇൻഡസ്ട്രിയുടെ കേസിൽ വെരി ലീസ്റ്റ് പൊസിഷനാണ് റഷ്യക്കുള്ളത്. ദാറ്റ്സ് വൈ മോസ്റ്റ് ഓഫ് ദ ഇൻഡസ്ട്രീസ് അണ്ടർ ദ private ownership. We know that what happened under the private ownership? ഓക്കെ, ദർ ഈസ് എ എക്സ്പ്ലോയിറ്റേഷൻ, ഹൈലി എക്സ്പ്ലോയിറ്റേഷൻ അല്ലേ, ഉയർന്ന തോതിലുള്ള ചൂഷണം ഉണ്ടായിരിക്കും. വാട്ട് ടൈപ്പ് ഓഫ് എക്സ്പ്ലോയിറ്റേഷൻ? ലെസ് വേജ്, മോർ വർക്കിംഗ് ടൈം, ഓക്കെ, ദാറ്റ് ടൈപ്പ് ഓഫ്. ഓക്കെ, ലിസൺ, കുറഞ്ഞ കൂലി, കൂടുതൽ ജോലി സമയം. ലിസൺ, I repeat, most industries were the private properties of industries. Working conditions were poor. The industrial workers suffered exploitation. Then, in the countryside, peasants cultivated most of the land. Countryside, most of the land peasants cultivated, but the nobility, the crown, and the church owned large property. Most of the area who cultivated, peasants cultivated, but their ownership, nobles, and also church, etc. Then, like the industrial workers, peasants also lived in a miserable conditions. Like the industrial workers, here is the peasants' life situation also very miserable. Okay, very poor life condition. Russia was an autocracy. Unlike other European rulers, Tsar Nicholas was not a subject to parliament. He cared little for his people. His indifferent attitude and corrupt bureaucracy alienated him from the general public. Tsar Nicholas and Russia's speciality, that is a autocratic. There is existed autocratic ruler. Their ruler Tsar Nicholas. His speciality, he was not subject to parliament. അദ്ദേഹം ജനങ്ങളെ യാതൊരുവിധ കെയറും ചെയ്തിരുന്നില്ല. Then, Tsar Nicholas II had dragged Russia into the First World War. Tsar Nicholas dragged Russia into First World War. ഒന്നാം ലോകമഹായുദ്ധത്തിലേക്ക് റഷ്യ വലിച്ചഴച്ചതിന് മുഖ്യ ഉത്തരവാദി എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് Tsar Nicholas ആണ്. Then, here, the Russian army was poorly equipped and trained to fight against the mighty Germans, so it suffered heavily in the war. Such a defeat turned people against the Tsar. അല്ലേ, യുദ്ധത്തിൽ പരാജയപ്പെട്ടത് എല്ലാ ജനങ്ങളും സാറിന് എതിരാക്കി, സാർ നിക്കോളാസ്. On the other hand, Karl Marx's theory of scientific socialism appealed to the people. At the same time, they accepted Karl Marx's scientific socialism. He said that workers had to overthrow capitalism and the rule of the private property by a revolution. Okay, listen. According to this scientific socialism, he said that workers had to overthrow capitalism, അല്ലെ, മുതലാളിത്തം എന്നുള്ളത് അവോയ്ഡ് ചെയ്യുക. Then, and the rule of private property by a revolution. അല്ലെ, പ്രൈവറ്റ് പ്രോപ്പർട്ടി, സ്വകാര്യ സ്വത്തായി നിലനിൽക്കുന്ന ക്യാപിറ്റലിസം, that want to completely avoided. Then, by the 1870s, socialist ideas had spread throughout Europe. Workers had formed associations to fight for better working conditions. Listen. By the 1870s, there is some changes. There is created some changes. They fight against, here is a better working condition, and also they formed the associations to fight for better working condition. But all political parties were illegal in Russia before 1914. Before 1914, all political parties or associations, they can't form the associations, that is the illegal, not legally. Okay, നിയമത്തിനെതിരായൊന്നും സ്റ്റാർട്ട് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റില്ലായിരുന്നു. Gradually, the Bolshevik had formed committees and Soviet and created conditions which eventually led to the Russian Revolution. Okay, we already discussed here is what happened after 1914. They completely avoided the restrictions. That means which type of restrictions? Yes, forming associations, then public meeting. Now they started the associations and also gathered there is public meeting. Okay. Then Lenin's April thesis, that already we discussed. Another question, describe the role of women during Russian Revolution. What was the role of women during the Russian Revolution? Okay. Russian Revolution of 1917 saw many early Russian feminists and ordinary Russian working women actively participating in the revolution. Okay, here is a women actively participating in the revolution. Which revolution? Russian Revolution. Then another thing here is, but peasant women were indifferent to both. That means bourgeois feminist movement and the Bolshevik revolution. They saw the revolution as a dangerous threat to their way of life. Only a small minority of peasant women joined the Bolshevik cause. Listen, here is somebody not agreed to participate the war because that is affected their life. That's why few women only participate in the Bolshevik party or Bolshevik causes. It were women workers whose action provided to spark for the revolution in February 1917. But February 1917, women participation that created spark for the war. Women workers stopped work on the International Women's Day and marched through the street on Petrograd. That also we discussed. They demanded an end to the war. High prices, hunger and deprivation workers endured. Their action proved to the catalyst for other workers to join the revolution. Okay, listen. They want to stop the deprivation. In October, women took part in the insurrection, joined the Red Guard, took part in the storming of the Winter Palace. They demonstrated the way of oppressed came to forefront and helped shape society in the revolutionary struggle. That means 1917 revolution. Here is women participated. What is the reason behind it? Because they want to demand. Here is increasing the wage and also avoid the food shortage, like that. Okay, children, here we discussed some more important questions from this topic. At the same time, you want to give more importance to reading textbook, because here is so many important things included, especially Lenin's April thesis, then February revolution, October revolution, like that. You want to study well. Okay, I will give more details related to this topic. That means related to this topic. Many more questions you want to write, I will give later. Okay, thank you, children.